Good evening and welcome to the April 26th regular meeting of the City of Arcata's Planning Commission. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on any item, there are several ways. While on your computer, click on the raise your hand icon on the right-hand side of your screen. When the public comment period opens, you'll be unmuted and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you're on your phone, you can also join the meeting and comment by calling the number and meeting ID, all of which is shown at the bottom of the screen. Press star 9 to let the clerk know that you wish to speak. Again, you will be unmuted and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you are in attendance, you can approach the podium and make your comment. Again, 3 minutes to speak. So this meeting is now officially called to order. Director Loya, can we get a roll call?
Absolutely. Excuse me. I'll first start by noting that Commissioner Figueroa is online. And Commissioner Davies?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Tagney?
Here.
Commissioner Barstow?
Here.
Vice Chair Mayer?
Here.
And Chair Besaid-Alcock.
Here. And
All
at the
present.
staff's table, we have David Loya, Director of Community Development. We have Jennifer Dart, who is the Deputy Director of Community Services. Is that right?
Community Development.
Community Development, sorry. And then we have Dilo Freitas, Senior Planner, right? Okay. All right. So this is time for oral communications. This time is provided for members of the public to address the commission or submit written communications on matters not on this evening's agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the commission may respond to statements. However, any request that requires commission actions will be set by the commission for a future agenda or referred to staff. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the commission on something that's not on tonight's agenda? Not on? Yep, please step forward.
I also have a couple online if you wanted to, which?
Let's take this.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Colin Fisk. I'm with CRTP, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. And my comments are on the process for reviewing the draft Gateway Area Plan. I'm delivering them now because, although I know the mobility element is on later, the process, I think, is not on the agenda. So as you've hopefully seen in our letter, we have some requests for how the plan review process proceeds from here. I want to be clear that we're not, as some have suggested, asking for less public engagement. What we're asking for is a process that encourages more effective, equitable, and representative public engagement. We believe that the key to such engagement is the continuation and expansion of staff's outreach efforts to date, particularly outreach to communities which are typically underrepresented in forums like this one, and meeting those people where they already live, work, and gather together to hear their ideas and feedback. When it comes to the Planning Commission, we're asking that you proceed by determining a limited number of meetings covering key topics and issues in the draft plan and put those meetings on the calendar now if you can. That'll help people decide which meetings are important for them to attend and even hopefully plan ahead to allow them to do that. It'll also avoid getting stuck in sort of ongoing unproductive attempts to edit by committee, which is a process that I've seen before, and although always, well-intentioned, never results in the best end product nor facilitates meaningful public engagement. I think this concept level review is particularly appropriate at this stage since we're far from reaching any actual decision points on the plan. Keeping in mind that CEQA process has not yet started, and the entire point of CEQA is to inform decision makers like the Commission as you conduct your deliberations. So you'll be going through this process essentially again later as well. Personally, I'm going to show up to as many of these meetings as I can, as I have been, no matter how you proceed. I'm pretty well versed in planning, and I care deeply about the impacts of these decisions. And frankly, it's my job to show up, to provide factual information, to advocate for healthy, sustainable transportation and land use outcomes, and to speak for our many members and supporters. But even I can't be at every meeting, and really we should be aiming for a process that encourages engagement from people who, unlike me, don't have the time, resources, and frankly the privilege to show up, one Tuesday night after another for the 3 minutes at the mic. So I hope that you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Simmons. I'm with the Redwood Coalition for Climate and Environmental Responsibility. I want to second everything Colin said about the planning process for the Gateway Plan. You know, a small meeting with a not representative segment of the population is less democratic than a big meeting with lots more people. And the way to encourage having bigger meetings with more outreach is to have fewer meetings that are better well organized and advertised. And I just, you know, I understand that people have concerns, and I want everyone to have their concerns heard, but I don't think we need a small segment of the population sort of writing plans. You know, that's sort of the job of staff and the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Chris Richards here. Shift gears a little bit. I just wanted to compliment David from the last meeting for suggesting that we get a mechanism for emailing you folks. And I thank him for bringing that up and making that something that we're looking forward to having. And I'm just promoting that happened. Still, it hasn't happened yet, and I know it takes time, but, you know, curious how the process is going or how that works, and I look forward to being able to contact you folks in a easy manner that's not engaging your private life, so you've got something on record here at the city from the community when they want to talk to you folks. Anyway, thank you so much. That's all I have for this part.
Thank you.
This is Gateway, but not related to the topic, so hopefully it's okay and it's short. Hello, staff and planning commissioners. The last planning commission meeting, Director Lawyer brought up some encouraging information about form-based codes and concern of such issues as building heights, setbacks, and solar shading. It represents a moment of community buy-in and clarification on how buildings will be sited into existing neighborhoods. My question is, at what point will this discussion begin on form-based codes, and will the community be brought into the loop during the draft comment period? Minimizing solar shading will further the city's effort toward zero net. And just to add to the first two people who spoke, we all definitely look forward to more robust engagement with more people in the community. So I think that's something we can all agree on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Joanne. I go by McGarry because I channel Greta Thunberg as a climate activist here in the local community, reminding myself and others that the climate crisis is urgent, dire, and that it should be in the foremost of our minds in anything we're talking about today. The draft Climate Action Plan, the CAP, has been re-released apparently this week, and so I know it's going to be up for discussion in the different communities in the region. Greenhouse gases is the #1 theme of that Climate Action Plan, and are reducing those greenhouse gases. So in any planning discussions, whether it's Gateway or otherwise, I would just really like us all to keep that in mind, the Climate Action Plan, because sometimes we just kind of focus down into an arena or an area of concern, and we kind of forget the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is what is going to keep us going or not. And so the Climate Action Plan draft has been re-released, so I wanted you all to be aware of that and consider that in anything you're discussing tonight and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tori Starr. I'm the President and Executive Officer of Open Door Community Health Centers. I'm also a longtime resident of Arcata for over 40 years and a homeowner within the community. A little bit of background on Open Door, if you're not familiar, we have over 6 facilities within the city of Arcata. We serve over 60,000 patients a year, and we are the largest provider of primary care in Humboldt and Del Norte counties. I wanted to do do 3 things tonight. Number 1, express our support for the Gateway Plan. The second, provide a little bit of context of the housing crisis from our perspective. And then the third thing is to provide you with a letter of support from the 13 members of the North Coast CEO Healthcare Leadership Group regarding the issues around housing for our community. I want to say the staff, and I want to compliment David and everybody else who has worked on the plan. I actually have had the pleasure of reading the entire plan and have been really impressed with the process and then just the thoroughness and content of it. And my office actually is in the Gateway District, right across from the Creamery building, so I am part of that community on a daily basis. And I just really have been so impressed with the thoroughness, the thoughtfulness, the detail, the attention to community input, and really trying to give us a framework of how we should move forward in the future. And in the work that I do as a healthcare leader, always trying to think for the future, laying out the right groundwork so that we can work together to respond to community needs, and have a framework within to do that is so very important. And I just think that the work that's been done so far has just been terrific, and wish we could turn out work like that ourselves on a regular basis. I want to give you some context around the housing crisis from our context as a healthcare provider, and then I think as one of the business leaders within the community. And it's really a time when we use the term crisis a lot. And I think there's probably good reason for that things seem like crisis is all around us. And whenever you run into that, you have to think about moving forward with some really thoughtful and I think deliberate and consistent action in that. And when I took over the leadership of Open Door, I never really thought that my job description would include housing developer. It just wasn't in the context. And then as the pandemic evolved, we had always known that our patients were negatively impacted if they didn't have a safe place to live. And we've seen the houselessness issue throughout our communities for a decade. But what has become more apparent to me is actually the impact that it's having on our workforce. And so I have some concrete examples that I can actually share with you. And really, safe, affordable housing is the key to the fundamental health of our community. And like I said, I've seen that in our patients, but now we're running into extreme difficulty recruiting providers of healthcare to our community because there is no affordable place to live. And I can give you a concrete example. We had, as you know, we're in partners with Providence Healthcare in the Family Medicine Residency Program, which we created to help create, healthcare providers that would stay in our community. We have lost 2 faculty members because they could not afford to come and live in our community, which is something I never thought we would run into. There's lots of other challenges that come in here, but a place to live that was affordable is in there. And then it got me to thinking, our providers actually, we pay well enough now, they can compete in this marketplace. And then I started to think about all of our folks that make less than $30 an hour. Right? And we need 2 medical assistants for every doctor, or we shouldn't recruit a doctor. And so I started to get really concerned about what's going to happen to those folks that are in our community that aren't in the upper echelon of the socioeconomic status, and how are we going to provide for them? So I've really become more engaged and involved, and we have luckily some properties in Arcata that we're looking at, but I want you just to be aware of the fact of that context. It's completely impacting our community now, the housing crisis. And the last thing I wanted to, and I can enter it into the record however that works, that this topic started to come up a year ago in the healthcare leadership group. We meet once a month. And so this is now an issue for every healthcare provider in our community in both Humboldt and Del Norte County. Housing always comes up, and it's just completely impacting everybody across the board from that standpoint. So we actually crafted a letter that just expresses our support for all the activities that are going on around the community to try to help develop safe, affordable housing. I think the Gateway Plan is a wonderful plan, and I hope that you can see the merit in that and know that the healthcare and business community is supportive of that. So thank you much for your time.
Thank you, Tori.
Hi, Connie Stewart, resident of Arcata. I also was at the healthcare meeting, and I also met with Mad River Hospital today. And I can tell you, we were supposed to have a meeting yesterday about workforce. And every time I started to talk to workforce with the healthcare CEOs, they said, Connie, we can't even talk about workforce until we talk about housing. Currently, Mad River has 3 doctors that have no home. We also did some back of the napkin math today. Actually, it was pretty good. We actually did better than back to the napkin math on what it costs to buy a house, current house on the market in Arcata. You have to make between $75 an hour and $90 an hour. So think about how many people in the workforce, even if you have 2 family members working, can afford the houses that are on the market right now. And then realize what Tori said about the majority of how if we don't have medical assistance, we can't keep our doctors here. So that is why we are saying how important it is for workforce housing. And I know there were people that were talking earlier about climate and being net zero. It's not about Arcata becoming part of the climate plan if everybody who is working here has to live outside of the area and drive to work every day. That's not the way we have to do that. We have to have enough housing for people working in our community. There are a lot of people like me, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to retire in 4 years, and I'd like to stay in Arcata for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be contributing, so that's another house that needs to be built for all of us who are retiring and still want to stay here. And so I just urge you to address this crisis, because literally we are going to lose some quality workforce folks from this region if we do not house them. Thank you.
Thank you. And then do we have some people on the phone?
I'm sorry, yes, we do. Go ahead, Arcata Fire Protection District.
Yes, this is Eric Loudenslager. I'm one of the directors for the Arcata Fire Protection District, and we sent a letter with regard to the environmental.
Can you start over? I'm sorry, the speaker wasn't on. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Am I on speaker now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay. I'm Eric Loudenslager, one of the directors for the Arcata Fire Protection District, and we submitted a letter as part of the planning for the environmental impact report for your updated general plan and the Gateway area plan. And we pointed out in that letter that the addition of 10,000 more people to the city of Arcata in the next 20 years, and all of the additional housing that's anticipated was going to have a substantial impact on the fire protection district. We don't have the funds and we don't have the personnel to provide that kind of protection. And we've asked for a full airing of what's needed in the EIR. And we haven't heard back. We didn't get any response to the letter that was sent. And what I'm here tonight to do is encourage the city and the EIR for the Gateway and general plan to interact with the fire district so that when we get to the end of this process, there isn't an element in there that discusses fire that is, from our perspective, untenable or inadequate to actually outline what we need to do in terms of additional funding, additional equipment, additional personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Go ahead, Caroline.
Hi, good evening. My name is Caroline Griffith. I'm the Executive Director of the North Coast Environmental Center. And I want to give some kudos to the city for its outreach so far to solicit input on the Gateway project, which has been pretty phenomenal compared to many processes like this that I have experienced. Really, the fact that the city is actively going out into the community to get input from people rather than expecting everyone to be able to come to a planning commission meeting or a city council meeting is really commendable. And it would be awesome to see this replicated with other planning and decision-making processes. And we actually got to have a We'll Come to You session yesterday, organized by an NEC intern up at Cal Poly. And it was really great to hear from students about their visions and concerns and what they want to see in the community, and really like their struggles to find housing and what they would like to see that housing look like. And it was really cool to see what we have in common, but also where our visions differ. And I think that that is a really big benefit of public processes like this, to see the diversity of opinions in a community. And I really wish that students and young people and working people all had more free time to show up to all of these meetings. But I appreciate that the city recognizes that that's not the case, and is really going out and making a concerted effort to meet people where they're at. But that said, I think that there are some things that could make this outreach better, one of which is having really clear decision points so that people know which meetings to show up to and which ones it's important to come to be heard. In talking to our intern after the meeting, one of the things that she mentioned is the difficulty in getting her peers engaged if it's not really clear when they need to engage and how and which meetings it's important for them to go to. And really, if people get burned out when a process takes a long time, and it's really difficult, to show up to one meeting for some folks, and even more difficult to show up to a series of meetings. So engagement can really drop off and can lead to people losing faith in the process and just not engaging at all, which is something that I'm really concerned about with young folks as they get involved with these processes. But what will really get input from a wider diversity of residents, including renters who will potentially be living in any housing built in the Gateway area, is empowering staff to ramp up these efforts to meet people where they're at and listen to their concerns and visions for the community, and to collect that data, whether good or bad or ugly, and supportive or against the plan, and to bring it back to the commission to help inform your decision making. The fact that there is Spanish translation being offered and that there's a real efforts to reach underrepresented populations is great, but we definitely need more of that and very clear guidelines of when the decision-making points will be, so we can work to get folks to those decision-making points. We currently, as has been addressed by multiple other people before me, we have a housing affordability crisis, which a lot of students and renters and aspiring homeowners will attest to. So it's really important to move this process forward with high quality meetings rather than a large quantity of meetings. And to bring a diversity of community members into the process, I think is something that you are doing a good job of so far as a city. There's really an opportunity to set an example regionally of how to get input like this and how to engage in these processes. So please empower staff to get out there and engage more and hear a diversity of voices and set clear decision points for meetings so folks know when to engage and when to show up, so that we can move forward and start building some much needed people-friendly and climate-friendly housing. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Pat.
Hi, my name is Pat Carr. I'm an Arcata resident and very much a supporter of the Gateway plan overall from my perspective in terms of my concerns about climate change. This would be a project with high density, making it much easier for people to have overall lower carbon footprints in their residences, much less transportation need if it's located right in the city as opposed to out in ag land or resource land nearby. those are areas that we really shouldn't be harming as long as we have the opportunity to stay within the Arcata footprint. Those are two of the major environmental reasons I'm concerned in support of the Gateway Plan. I'm also really quite aware of the concerns discussed by the Open Door representative tonight in terms of affordability, and that we really need in Arcata to have a range of both rental and residences for sale to meet a wider range of purchasers. And then in terms of the cities seeking public input, I very much appreciate the fact, as Caroline Griffith was saying earlier, that the city has been reaching out and attending meetings. I was present at a Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Climate Action Campaign meeting a couple of weeks ago, at which David Loya attended on a Sunday afternoon. Now, Sunday afternoons, I know they're basically, most of you folks have the weekend off. City workers have that time off. But for many people, coming to Planning Commission meetings at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday evening is right after they've gotten home from work. I've just been rushing to fix dinner. So it's really helpful to have meetings that might be at different times and places and at community organizations. And as Caroline was also saying, the awareness of meetings having some specific decision-making point rather than just kind of proceeding at a pace that's difficult for us to recognize. So thank you very much for moving in this direction with the Gateway Plan. I think it is great, and I think that the way that the city is seeking information and input from residents can be improved, but I'm really appreciative that you have been as open as you have been. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Go ahead, Lulu.
Great. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Beautiful. Planning Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to give a comment this evening. My name is Lulu Michaelson, and I'm a renter in Arcata. And even with a well-paying job, I struggled to find quality and affordable rental options in the area. It took me months and even a stint moving temporarily back home with my family to secure a rental in Arcata. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Professionally, I've also spent the last decade working at the intersection of housing policy, racial justice, and homelessness prevention. It is clear to me that our community is facing a critical tipping point in the local housing crisis. Younger and working class people are feeling the pressure of displacement, and every night our unhoused neighbors sleep on the street. At the same time, we're also facing an escalating global climate crisis. For my generation, and I'm a millennial, I'm 30 years old, it feels like decision makers at the national and local levels are lacking the necessary urgency in addressing these interlocking crises. It feels like too little, too late. That's why I'm so energized by the Gateway Area Plan. It's just the type of bold, thoughtful, and comprehensive planning we need for an equitable and sustainable future in Arcata. I'm proud and excited that renters, environmental groups, and employers are standing up and advocating to see this change happen quickly in our community. I'm here tonight to ask you as planning commissioners to keep up the urgency that this moment demands. I'm hopeful that the review of this plan can move forward efficiently with a transparent, streamlined, and time-bound process for review. I fully support community engagement, especially from voices who are underheard in government decision-making. And I've been impressed with many of the public outreach strategies employed by the city, which we've heard many commenters address tonight. There's always more to be done, but reaching diverse constituents requires creative on-the-ground engagement and organizing. The majority of residents will never come to a planning commission meeting, no matter how many you host. And that's why hearing about this commission's plan to do an extended review of the Gateway Area Plan was honestly disappointing. It feels like our local leaders have again failed to grasp the urgency of this moment, and our community is giving over to what sociologists and Professor Catherine Levine Einstein calls the politics of delay. Professor Einstein studied the meeting minutes of more than 97 local planning commissions. She found that community members who show up to these meetings do not reflect the larger public. I think tonight is an exception on that, I'll say. Einstein found that there are the folks that come to planning commission meetings and comment are 25% more likely to be homeowners and 9% more likely to be white than the general community. They're also disproportionately older in age and longer term residents. She found that in these commission meetings, only 15% of folks who showed up were pro-housing, when in the same jurisdictions, more than 56% of residents voted yes on affordable housing ballot measures. Professor Einstein found that planning commissions often delay much needed zoning, infrastructure, and housing projects. This politics of delay is a dynamic which she and other researchers see as a key contributing factor to our nation's housing shortage. So I urge this commission to not fall into these same dynamics and instead create a transparent, streamlined, and time-bound process for review that efficiently moves us toward more housing in this community and the passage of the Gateway Action Plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lulu. Go ahead, Ben.
Hi, my name is Ben Salman. I'm a renter here in Arcata. I just wanted to voice my support for the Gateway Plan. Arcata is in desperate need of additional housing. It's abundantly clear to just about everyone who lives here. I don't believe that extending this process is going to make it more democratic or participatory. There's significant populations like young people, people who work more than one job, unhoused folks who, despite having the most to gain from this proposal, will not be able to attend meetings. The city needs to display leadership here to help address the housing shortage. It's a grievous problem in Arcata. I think it's a clear problem. I think that the solution is straightforward. And I just hope that the city council will proceed with necessary action to increase the housing stock. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Go ahead, Sherry.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am a tenant but would love to buy a home in Arcata. I would like to express my strong support for the detailed review of the Gateway Area Plan that's been proposed by the Planning Commission Chair and other commissioners. As currently written, the Gateway Area Plan does not guarantee any affordable housing units. Affordability has been proposed as an option. No design standards have been set yet. What are expressed as amenities, such as bike parking, EV charging, commercial first floor facilities, etc., are not required under the current draft plan, but should be. The public has the right to express their support for the elements of good design. If public involvement is decreased at this crucial time, or if the Planning Commission voluntarily limits their involvement, we may end up with none of the currently optional amenities, no ownership options, and too tall buildings that will not be affordable as they will be too expensive to build. I heard two presentations recently given by consultant Dan Zach, formerly of Redwood City and Fresno Community Development. Both cities adopted form-based codes to facilitate ministerial approval of conforming developments. Redwood City developed their form-based codes after 2 to 3 years of extensive public and planning commission involvement to ensure infill that meets the needs of the community and that the community can be happy with. Minimizing community involvement by limiting the number of meetings should not be an option just to try to push the plan through to swift approval. In the meantime, there's nothing stopping developers. They may apply for permits to build and address our current and urgent housing needs. We rely on the Planning Commission for your expertise and guidance. Please plan to give the Gateway Area Plan the detailed review it needs and deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Keenan, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Keenan Hilton. I'm a renter in Arcata. And yeah, kind of continuing with the topic of public comment items not on the agenda. I want to say that I support the Gateway Plan as conceived. Dense walkable development is really right there at the nexus, at the center of the Venn diagram between how to meaningfully address the housing crisis and the climate crisis. And so I applaud the city of Arcata, different levels of, the planning commission, the city council, and of course, a tremendous job by city staff so far in the process. As other people have said, average members of the community can't make it to the meeting. I was really heartened to hear Lulu speaking very eloquently about this study that illustrates exactly what I think we all intuitively know, which is that the folks that can show up to meetings over and over and over again are not actually an accurate representation of the community at large. These are valuable voices, and I'm not saying that they're not, and clearly, some people are more directly impacted than others, and this should be taken into account. However, the interests of the community members that can't afford to pay Arcata rents or can barely afford them, that are not going to make it to meetings, these are, of course, community members that are just as important, just as integral to our community as those who own adjacent property and can show up to meeting after meeting. So I think that staff's efforts to go directly to meet the community where they are have really been tremendous. I mean, I think that this is good planning. And so I think that encouraging staff, asking them to continue on is a great move to really increase the breadth of the opinions and really importantly, of course, the values of the people of Arcata, because that's really what every single person is an expert in, is what do we value? Do we value affordability? Do we value addressing the climate crisis, right? And then coming up with the solutions and hearing about them from staff who that's their job to think about what is the most meaningful way to address these community values. And I think that based on, of course, a lot of years of community engagement and the general plan processes and so forth, that in the Gateway Plan, you have an example of a lot of meaningful interventions in how to address the values of Arcata. And so are there details to sort out? Yes. But I think that identifying what those items are, telling everyone when you're going to make those decisions, just like other speakers have said, so that people know how to plan their lives and which meetings to show up to, keep sending staff out to do the type of engagement that they're doing, and trust staff to implement the vision, because it's not just tonight. This is a process that the city of Arcata has been working on for years in one way or another. And so, yeah, that's really all I have to offer. Thanks to each and every one of you for your public service.
Thank you. Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Kathy Chandler Klein. I live adjacent to the Gateway area, and I support the plan. First of all, I want to appreciate the planning department for the extensive outreach and their efforts to engage the community. Personally, I've been on 3 guided walks, one of which I organized and they came to. City staff have come to 2 meetings of community groups I'm part of. They gave information, they answered questions, they solicited and listened to feedback. I've seen them at farmers market. So I hear people saying they're worried there's not enough community engagement or venues for feedback. So I'd really like to encourage people to take advantage of what is being offered, because it's a lot. They will come to you and you could and should give your input. I support the plan because it addresses housing scarcity. It promotes economic integration and equity in housing, but especially because of its emphasis on sustainability. Higher density, infill, walkability, these features address the climate catastrophe that's coming. The climate crisis is so overwhelming, it is really tempting to minimize it, to say, well, I believe in climate change, but this solution is too hard, or it's too much, or it's not good enough, or I don't like this piece or that. I understand that, But for me, the bottom line is I need to be able to look into the eyes of my children and my grandchildren and say, I did something. I made this compromise. I made that sacrifice. It wasn't perfect, but I did it. I did what I could to try and protect a livable future for you. This plan is something we can do here and now. We can do our part. I do have two concerns. One concern is sea level rise in that area. I'm hearing conflicting opinions, and I think it's really important that experts weigh in and that it's thoroughly studied right away so that we can go ahead and know that that's wise. And if that question, assuming that question is answered, my other concern on the other side is about process obstacles to this project that I support. I would hate to see the Gateway bogged down in endless meetings, in red tape, in individual reviews of each piece of development that will delay and possibly kill the project. I think a form-based code approach could prevent some of that and give us development that fits into and enhances Arcata. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Go ahead, Aaron.
Hi, I'm a renter of a business space in the proposed Gateway area. Due to recent lease changes and conversations we've had, workers and artists that rent space in the proposed Gateway area are getting concerned that we will be forced to relocate when landlords are permitted to build high density. Please keep us in mind when you formulate how best to use this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Ann, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Dr. Ann Lindsay, and I support the Gateway Plan. And when I was county health officer, we did a health impact assessment of the Humboldt County General Plan update, and infill, as opposed to sprawl, came strongly as a more healthy alternative. And I wanted, one thing I've heard people complain about, you know, traffic and parking related to the Gateway Plan, but if we don't build infill, then people are going to move out outside of the city and drive in to work, and it really makes more work, more traffic overall. Being a senior, I'm aware that most of us live in houses that are not really accessible, you know, if we become frail or disabled. And I would like to, and I've read through the plan, Gateway Plan, and I haven't seen any mention of accommodation or planning for accommodation of disabled and frail elderly people. And I would encourage you to include the requirement for adaptable housing design. And this stops short, that means that that the homes are fairly easily adapted should someone be disabled. So it's an element I haven't seen in the plan. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address this.
Thank you, Ann. Lizzie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to add a little comment too. My name is Lacey Ridds, and I'm a small business owner and have been a resident of Arcata off and on for like around the last 13 years. I'm a renter, and I probably will be as long as homes are around $500,000. And I just wanted to express my support for the Gateway Plan as it's conceived. High-density mixed-use buildings are our inheritance. They are the way generations of humans have built spaces all over the world. There is a reason, in my mind, why places like the Plaza are much more resilient than places like the Westwood Shopping Center. It is our responsibility to build communities that actually function well, like the Plaza. I would happily move from the brand new single family home I currently live in off of Alliance, which I had spent 6 months trying to find, to a more social place that was walkable to downtown. I'd be close to jobs, the co-op, live music, the farmer's market, the community garden, restaurants, bars. Making places people actually want to spend time in is good for business, good for mental health, and good for our bodies and relationships. And all of this does not even take into account the very real danger of climate change, which I feel should inform all other issues, and which makes a plan like the Gateway Plan sound great. So I appreciate your time, and thank you.
All right, thank you. Call in user 2. I can see that you've unmuted, but we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Oh, this is Darlene Spohr from Arcata House Partnership.
Go ahead. We can hear you now, Darlene.
Okay, great. Thanks. Arcata House Partnership is a housing and homeless service provider in the area. And we believe that housing is a healthcare issue, an employment issue, an environmental issue, a quality of life issue. The greatest increase in requests for our services is from families with small children and seniors who are newly homeless or will become homeless without interventions and support from agencies like us. Our community needs housing for people at all levels of affordability. I think we need to be a relentless force in disrupting homelessness and providing housing for those who are our most vulnerable citizens and for those who we want to support before they become homeless. We need to keep the efforts to build affordable housing units moving forward and quickly while we continue the discussion to improve our community and our city. I want to thank the city staff who have put so much time and energy into this plan, and I hope that we can continue to move it forward so that everyone has a place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brett.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Brett Ridds. I'm Lacey Ridds' brother, and I live with her in the same single-family home that we spent so long trying to find. And I agree with what she said wholeheartedly. I would love to live closer to somewhere like the Plaza. And I think that doing this high-density housing project is one of the best ways to get another place like that, or to consolidate all people in a closer area so that things like driving are less done. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than I support this project and others like it. That's what we need to do. Sprawl is not the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. David, go ahead.
Hello, my name is David Cobb. I work for the Wiyot tribe as the head of Biscama Humboldt Community Land Trust. I speak, though, as an individual in enthusiastic support of the Gateway Plan for so many of the reasons that other speakers have in terms of the content. I feel no need to rehash that. I did want to take the opportunity, though, to really applaud the planning department staff for the level of community engagement. I have participated in and helped to create processes for participation multiple times as a social change agent. I've rarely seen it done as well as I think the Gateway Plan has been. So I'm calling in to say thank you to staff and to this entire process. It has been really remarkable. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Hello, my name is Joe Archibald, and I just wanted to put in a comment as a renter in Arcata, as someone who's looking actively to try to buy a place and feeling more and more sort of shut out of the ability to buy a place that's walkable in Arcata to where I work at Humboldt, Cal Poly Humboldt. And also as a mother of a 4-year-old. So I haven't been able to be as engaged in this process because I do have a daughter. And so these meetings are hard to make. And so I want to also add my voice to say there are a lot of us who are probably like the silent majority that really, really support this plan as something that is like getting at the heart of what Arcata is, a community that cares so deeply about the environment and about equitable communities, but that it's just hard to join these meetings. And so making this process, as streamlined and not dragging it out with many, many meetings that are just going to be hard for people like me to join. And I also want to thank the planning committee that made this wonderful plan, and I'm so excited to see it implemented. I think it's going to be such a wonderful thing for Arcata. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That appears to be the end of public comment.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to the consent calendar. So all matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the commission and enacted in one motion. Oh, I don't need to say all that, I guess. The only item on the consent calendar are the March 22nd minutes. Does anyone need to pull that item, or can we get a motion to approve? We get a motion to, did I say April? I meant,
You said March 20th.
oh, I said the wrong date. I'm sorry. I was just, April 12th minutes. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes from April 12th?
I'll move to approve.
So we have a first, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Okay, good evening, Commission. I apologize for distracting us from the Gateway Plan. I know there are a lot of people in the audience who want to talk about that, but I will keep it brief. So the General Plan Annual Progress Report, or APR, is something that we put together around this time every year. The State Office of Planning and Research began to require them annually last year. So you'll notice that the structure of this report is very similar to last year. As we noted in the staff report, the structure is pretty open to however we want to send this information and communicate the work that we've been doing over the past year. We're completely open to ideas or recommendations from the Commission. But the first two sections of the report are the most content-rich, I would say. They contain the projects that we have been working on in the last calendar year, and the second section is our housing element reporting, which you should have seen at a previous meeting, and it ties to our housing element APR, which has already been sent to the State Housing and Community Development Department. And I think that the intent of the State Office of Planning and Research to begin to require these reports is mostly to try and connect the dots and assist jurisdictions in reflecting what work they've been doing and how it ties to the policy that we all work so hard to create in the first place, and make sure that we really are looking for consistency between all the different elements of our general plan and our projects. So we have this report, the CIP came before you recently, as well as the housing element annual progress report, and these three documents sort of connect all of the dots between all of the projects that we undertook in the last calendar year. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them, and Jen is also here to speak to the housing element of this if you'd like to ask questions about that as well.
Great, thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments?
Yeah, as last year, it was really interesting to read the report and the list of what all has been going on to fulfill the general plan, and the list of policies in place, some of them for the last 22 years. That direct that activity. And one of the things I was actually really struck by was that these reports provide an opportunity for us to start gearing up to revise some of those policies, which are obviously now a bit dated, and to identify some of the new policies that we probably need to focus on. But it was striking to me, remarkable to me, how many of those 22-year-old policies and the values that they embody still feel current. And I never quite expect that when I go back to the plan. And so I think it's a good kick-in for the general plan update that we're going to be spending so much time on over the coming year. That said, if there are any little edits, are those things that we can send you over the coming week or so before it goes in?
Yeah, we'd be happy to take note of any now, or I guess I would request if you have any that should be updated to maybe send them before, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, just because. Just because we are trying to get it to the council. And if we were going to include it in their next packet, I believe it would need to be set tomorrow. So we can also put it off if they're substantive, obviously, but.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to give you a 10 a.m. deadline on any comments. If you have, if your comments are mostly just wordsmithing or grammatical, I think those are fine to send in to us. Excuse me, and we can make those changes. If you feel like there are, substantive issues that you want to discuss with the rest of the commissioners, or take input and make changes, I think we can put this off until the your next meeting, and then we can take it up at the following one. We do have a timeline for turning in our housing element APR, and Jen, I don't know if you want to speak to that. So those pieces would need to come in earlier.
Yeah, so actually the housing element APR is already turned in. It was due April 1st. So that's been turned in, and it doesn't require, it is part of this presentation, but it doesn't require its own presentation. The one thing I did want to share, because I thought it was kind of just valuable information, and some of our public members have asked for this, is kind of where we're at on targets with our ADUs that we decided that we would put in, and we kind of calculated that out. We're exactly on target, so we're doing it about 10 per year for ADUs, so that's just something to note. And we're doing really well in our very low income category, so if you look at your packet, page 23, you can get some detailed information about the percentage complete. Each of these categories, we should be around 20%, so you can see that we're falling behind in a couple of areas, the low, moderate, and above moderate. We do have some projects that are coming on in 2022, which are some fairly large projects. I know that you guys are all aware of the Home Key projects, so Red Roof, and which they have different names now, which West Village and Valley West, I don't know, they're almost the same, but yeah, the two projects, the Home Key projects that are coming on, will add an additional 138 units of very low to our RENA, and that'll actually put us at 156% of that category. So I just wanted to share that out because I think these are things that are going to be coming up this year. We're going to see I believe, a very large uptick in 2022. I think we'll probably be somewhere around over 200 units in that year. Some of those are from the two, like I said, the two Home Key projects, but there's also a large Westwood project that's pending. That would be in the moderate income category. And I'm happy to kind of go through those if you have any interest in the different categories and what that means.
I would be interested.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's just interesting. So those are all one-bedroom units. That's the proposal for those at this time. In order to be an above moderate one-bedroom unit, it would rent for $1,630, so $1,630 or above. This is HCD's calculation, so this is how we measure it. For a moderate unit, it would be between $1,020 and $1,630. That would be a moderate unit. These are all one bedrooms. A low-income unit would be $525 to $1,020, so that's the range there. And then anything below $525 is considered very low. So that's their rent limits. And on open market, what we do is we kind of look at what the range of rents are, because we don't know what, it's speculative to know what the rents are going to be by the time they're built. And so that's just sort of a measure that we look at. But I just thought it was interesting. I do think that affordability is, it's definitely shocking when you look at kind of that information. So I just wanted to share that because I do think it's important for you guys to get an idea of what, and that's for rents. I don't have the ownership numbers for you, but I don't think that anything in Arcata would fall within a low or very low ownership model right now, not even a condo. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that too. I just wanted to share some of those bits of information.
Does anyone have any questions for Jen? No?
Briefly, small question. On page 13, under the transportation element, there's reference to planting street trees, number 9 on that list. And I just wonder if there's a new citywide kind of street tree plan that's being crafted, or if this is just a beginning of thinking in that direction.
Yeah, so this is referencing on packet page 13 some of the suggested pedestrian enhancements. Is that correct? Yeah. So this is existing general plan policy that's been on the books for, like the commissioner was saying, 22 years. It doesn't necessarily suggest a new program, but it is, an existing guidance that we have to follow under existing general plan language.
Okay, thank you.
Open it up to are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this report? Please, please come forward. I'm sorry, can you start again?
Oh, yeah, it's Jim. Hi. And mostly just with all the affordability, do you foresee, hopefully, the numbers are boggling. If I had, like everybody says, if you had to buy a house now, it's impossible and it's so hard for everybody right now. With that said, it sounds like there's potential for deed restriction within the moderate price houses, and just wondering if, because it seems like there's so many categories where you have only so much money, and then you're faced against that. I'm just wondering if they'll go all the way up the ranks to the moderate level, and that's my question. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions before? Do you have a question?
Are we still going over this, or are we doing like the end of other comments?
Sorry, Commissioner White, do you want to turn your mic on?
No, we are commenting on this report. So if you have any questions regarding this report, go ahead and ask.
I guess I had a question about the transportation element policy, 5F pedestrian enhancements, and it talks about improved pedestrian facilities and enhancements in the areas of the city with the greatest need, and it lists everywhere except for the Valley West North Arcata. And I guess that's my question, is where do we fit in this plan?
Yeah, I think, again, to Dila's point, that these are existing general plan policies, and then to Commissioner Mayer's point, I think that many of these really do still speak to the values we have, but there are obvious improvements that could be made to many of them as well. And so I think that's an area where, we'd want to focus on when we do the general plan updates. So, clearly the Valley West does have, bus service, but it's also woefully lacking in many of the other alternative transportation modes to get to Valley West. It's almost a little island out there, and so I think that's something that we need to work on in the next general plan cycle.
All right, so yes, definitely need to make sure we update that. So if there aren't any further questions, are you looking for a motion to approve that resolution so we can forward it to the city council? Is that what we're looking? Okay, so can we get a motion to approve this with corrections that you're going to send her?
I can move to approve resolution PC 2202 and forward it to the city council.
All right, we have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
First and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any? Yeah, okay. All right, motion approved. Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to the Gateway Area Plan mobility section or chapter. And before we start, though, a lot of public brought up, and David and I had been talking about kind of really organizing this so it's predictable, like every certain meeting we'll talk about a different chapter and advertise that so people in the public who have a section that's really important to them, and they can know that when it's coming up. They don't have to listen in every time. So we're going to work on that. David, maybe you and I can work on that offline and kind of come up with a strategy. So anyway, are you going to give us a staff report on this?
Yeah, I have a presentation for you. I don't have a staff report per se. Didn't have anything written in the packet. We'll try and provide more written content, and certainly we'll address the desire to have some of these meetings laid out. I do want to point out that some of this does depend on the pace with which the Planning Commission goes through them. So the schedule may change, and so just stay tuned into that. And I also do want to let folks know. I know that it's nice to have several weeks in advance notice, and we'll try and provide that, but I wanted to outline as an additional resource that we do have an e-notifications, and when the items come up on the Gateway, because we know that there are a lot of people who are interested in that, and a lot of those people have signed up for our e-notifications. We'll send those out. So please, if you haven't signed up for e-notifications and you are interested, now's the time to do that. Okay, so today I wanted to start with mobility. Mobility is one of the largest sections in the Gateway Area Plan. It's one of the more detailed sections in the Gateway Area Plan, and it proposes some of the most dramatic changes to the streetscape that we have in the Gateway Area Plan. And so, because of that content and the importance of it, I wanted to start with it first. And this is a very large section, and so we will probably take this up in two parts. Won't look to complete the review of the mobility section today. I guess the other thing I'll say before diving into the material here is that I have both the Gateway Area Plan, the document up, and so we can look at specifically what's in the plan if you have questions about that. But this presentation focuses a little bit more on, in addition to what's in the plan, why it's in the plan, why we are designing the roads or proposing to design the roads the way that they're proposed. I do want to note that there has been a lot of public comment received already on the mobility section, and as well as other sections. And I do just want to remind people that our strategy for incorporating that is to bring it all together for the decision makers' review, along with recommendations once we've completed the public engagement, instead of doing it in drips and drabs all along the way. And so, folks have been a little frustrated by not seeing their comments reflected in the content. So I just wanted to remind people that all of those edits will be made at one time near the end of the process once we've done the engagement. Okay, so I have a PowerPoint presentation for you. Feel free to jump in at any time if you have questions, and I will try and be succinct because there is a lot of content. So this is the actual mobility section. Like all of the other sections, it starts with an overview, goes into some of the background on what we're trying to address in the mobility section. It ties back to the challenges and opportunities section and tries to flesh out some strategies for that. Again, recall these sections of this document ultimately gets embedded in the general plan. This is an element of the general plan. And so this is the policy level document. Some folks have been a little frustrated by the higher order of detail in this document and are wondering what the more specific details are. Those get fleshed out in the zoning ordinance. And so you will see a bit higher order. But I can obviously speak to the kinds of things we've been thinking about and hearing from folks as to what should be embedded in that ordinance, the zoning. So the mobility strategy is next. Turning the page, we've got a couple of maps that show vehicular circulation and non-vehicular circulation. This map shows G and H streets, one-way couplets, G going northbound, H going southbound, and 8th and 9th Street, again, one-way couplet. These yellow roads are proposed new one-way couplets, so continuing the 8th and 9th Street, turning around at O, so that you'd have a complete circuit for 8th and 9th Street, and then transforming K Street, which is right now congested and unattractive to non-motorized transportation, into a one-way that would provide for more room for those alternative transportations, with an L Street southbound one-way, creating a new one-way couplet north and southbound there on K and L Streets. Looking into a little bit more depth around the relationship, the red outline, of course, is around the plaza. There's one-ways, South G and H, and we'll zoom through some of this because you're very familiar with it, but it's just to orient to the existing condition and what's being proposed. 8th and 9th Street, again, similar one-way couplets. And these provide for more room. The G Street couplet right now is a two-way with street frontage, sidewalk, row of parking, 2 lanes of travel, a bike lane segregated, another parking zone, pedestrian zone, and street frontage. So that's what you see on both G and H Street. 8th and 9th Street would be extended, again, turning around at O and coming back, so that would complete that couplet. So I just want to zoom in on this segment here and explore some of the amenities. And so the idea here, looking at 9th Street by way of example, is to have sidewalks on both sides, and this is showing just the sidewalk on the public right-of-way. The Gateway Area Plan will also call for extending sidewalk or public space into the private side where we can, to try and create more space for pedestrian-oriented feel. There's a segregated bike lane. We've heard a lot from a lot of different folks about trying to make these not just painted lines on the ground, but to create some barriers. And so we're looking at ways to do that, even if they're, those cones. There are a lot of, interseating driveways and road crossings and those kinds of things, which make somewhat of a challenge for creating a segregated bike lane, but I'll show you some of the ideas that are in the plan. There's a one-lane drive aisle, and the proposal is to do, instead of parallel parking, to expand the parking on street by doing this this herringbone parking, angle in. And then it also provides for these bulb outs. You'll see these all throughout the circulation element of the Gateway Area Plan. What these do is they create a shorter distance for peds to have to cross, instead of crossing the full, 25 approximate width of the roadway. So those are some of the design concepts that you'll see throughout. Zip through some of this and look at the K and L Street couplet. Right now, K is a two-way, turning onto Alliance there, and L is not open for through traffic. There are barriers at the north and south end to creating that circuit. So looking again at the design for this, again, we've got nice wide sidewalks, parking parallel there. We've got the drive width, drive aisle, and then the bike aisle, and on the other side, another sidewalk. Again, the bulb outs that create the shorter path for travel, for crossing. And then this piece is yet to be worked out. You have to understand the L Street connection at the north end. Here's the mini storage. Here's K turning into Alliance, and here's a proposed new connection. Where exactly this connection happens is still yet to be determined. And I want to sort of pause for a second here. I've had a number of people say, hey, wait, I've got a driveway that goes through there. You didn't show my driveway. I want to recognize this is a high-level design. It's not a real detailed design. All of those driveways are not being proposed to be removed. They're just not included in the, the higher order design that we've got here. So some of this is yet to be worked out and how exactly it would flow and function. There's some property acquisition that needs to be done. So from the plaza to the Creamery District, a little tour down 9th Street, just to give you a sense for how crossing K Street is. Right now, you have those 2 lanes of travel to cross. There's our little star person. Everyone in Arcata is a star. Looking that direction, there's the full 25 width that I'd mentioned earlier. You've got 2 directions of traffic to cross here, and then you've also got the turning movements to contend with as well. With the proposal, you'd have only 1 direction, and then the right-hand turning movement off of 9th Street. This reduces the potential points of interaction if you wanted to cross on that northern crosswalk from, I believe it was 32 points of intersection with vehicles to 2. So it's a safer crossing for pedestrians. This is just demonstrating some of that. So you get to the Creamery District, and then you can come down to L Street. Right now, L Street is two ways for traffic. It's a very narrow street. There's a line of parking there, and the proposal is to turn it into 1 lane southbound and 1 lane of parking parallel on the side, retaining the vegetative buffers and the segregated bike trail, retaining the sidewalk on the other side. So here's sort of a plan view of what L Street would look like, and that just replicates the exact same thing I just said, flipping it over so that it's oriented the same direction that it was before. You have the landscaping, the trail, vegetative buffer, sidewalk, parking lane. Really wanted to hammer this one home, so we gave it to you in many different ways. I miss Rob. Okay, so looking real quick at non-motorized transportation, or I guess maybe I should take a pause real quick here, see if there are questions about the motorized.
Are there any questions so far? Well, I do. Of course I do. So a couple of questions. So when you're back on 9th Street, how is the freight and U-Haul and those trucks, is there room for them to pull over and not block traffic? And if somebody's moving or if a business is having something delivered, is there plenty of room for that without blocking traffic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's been raised in public comment as well before. There are, definitely some existing businesses that have, freight loading on site, but there are many businesses who basically they have to unload into the street, and so we're going to have to plan for where those zones would be. And for some of these sites, for them to be able to be developed into mixed use sites, they would definitely have to have some infrastructure on site. They couldn't rely entirely on the public right-of-way for that. In terms of maneuvering, we've had some comments about whether or not larger trucks, fire trucks, those kinds of emergency services vehicles would be able to navigate these roads, and the answer is absolutely yes. The public safety personnel would always like a larger road than a smaller road, so they don't have to worry as much about driving through it. But these will certainly be designed to standards that would accommodate all of those design specifications for vehicles. So that's definitely being taken into consideration. And that could include, mountable curbs and that sort of thing. So it may be that, an emergency services vehicle in some of these areas may have to mount a curb to get through there, but it's designed for them to be able to do that.
And then what about, like, if someone is just moving, a residence, where their U-Haul and they're packing their furniture, is there going to be room for that? I'm just thinking of people, what are people really going to do?
Yeah, for sure. Again, the sites will have to be designed so that they have adequate service access on them. And some of that will be really dependent on, the types of uses that are occurring on the site. If you have a hotel, it'll have a much different service needs and parking needs than, an apartment complex would. And so those, are really down to the, the needs of that particular use. But we also see in many areas where you have, maybe a bus zone, second as a loading zone during certain parts of the day, or vice versa. You have a loading zone that can be parked in during certain parts of the day. And so, timing of those deliveries, may be critical, as we grow and mature and become, more densified. I hope that answers the question.
And then speaking of growing and maturing, so from Arcata High School, like when the students get picked up and dropped off on M and, is it 16, wherever Arcata High School is, what is that going to look like? Because that gets pretty, 16th, yeah. The morning and the evening, there is like packed cars. And then sometimes they get anxious and sometimes they'll dart out in front of you. It's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
Is this going to help that or make it worse?
I would have to, I'd have to ask, Netra to weigh in on, some of these issues. He's kind of oversees the transportation circulation. I believe that the place where many people drop off their students is not actually a drop-off site. I mean, it's, and people are just doing what they can do to avoid 16th Street. And I recognize that. I mean, that's human. That's going to happen. I guess what I would say is that the roadway improvements that are being proposed may not reduce the amount of traffic, and certainly to the extent that there are more people living in this area, you'll have more peds and pedestrians and potentially more cars, driving at those peak hours. But the improvements that are being proposed here will make it safer for them. So right now, students who are dropped off at M Street, walking across Alliance to get to school, again, they're crossing the gauntlet, 2 ways of traffic at, some of those people are driving 40 miles an hour and they have a 25-foot distance to go across. And so the improvements that we're proposing here would, slim up the road, slim up the crossing distance and provide refuge in the middle. And so we would extend those, up Alliance as well.
Well, if it's going to take longer if they're going to have to sit in their car and idle, and it's going to take longer for them to leave, to exit, I mean, that's not what we want, right? We want to get people off the road. I just feel like that could be improved somehow, but it's such a tight space to get in and out of Arcata High School. There's, only 2 ways.
Yeah.
And then it isn't safe for the kids that, parents are dropping off their kids and they want to get to work. And I've seen some stuff and it's just not safe. Something needs to be worked out in that area. I feel like there's an idea. Somebody just hasn't come up with it yet.
Yeah. We'll definitely, I'll touch base with Netra, our city engineer, and see if the Transportation Safety Committee can take that one up.
Okay, and I have one more question. So about bus stops, where are all the bus stops? We need a lot of bus stops. So there's going to be built into I know that our projects, like our housing, you can make them build in a place where the bus can stop. But what about bus stops all around Arcata? We need a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is, look to the transportation element updates that'll be coming soon in the general plan amendments that we're proposing. We don't typically specify in a circulation plan exactly where the bus stops are, and we actually move them around depending on, the demand. If we have higher demand in areas, we'll include more bus stops. But that is notably lacking in this circulation element, the mobility element of this plan, in particular because the idea is that we want to try and promote bus use with some of the amenities like bus pass program for businesses and residents, where that project would actually pay for bus passes for all the workers or all the people who are living there, thereby creating more supply. Right now, there's the demand for busing is low because the headways are low, and it's just not very convenient for people to get around on our buses. If the supply was there and it was a pain to find a parking space, then people would start to mode shift naturally. They would find it's more convenient to jump on the bus or mass transit to get there than otherwise. And so as we plan for that future, obviously we need to have places for buses to stop. And so that will, I guess what I would say is that will be coming in this plan. And there are some creative ways where you can co-locate space that I've seen in other cities, but I don't want to pretend to be an expert on that. Certainly the city engineer, when we talk about those elements, would be more, more able to speak on that.
Yeah, this is a question about timing. And obviously, this whole scheme would be a huge change in the overall circulation pattern of a huge part of downtown. And I'm wondering when those changes in the bigger picture of all this development would actually occur, and if there's any thought about trying them out with paint before people start pouring concrete, or if they would be incremental, where you would change the east-west pattern couplet before trying to change the north-south one, which would require some new construction and moving a bike path and a big array of stuff. So that's the first question. And the second question is, in looking at all of the moving traffic narrowing issues, are there any of the current industrial sites which the new zoning would make non-conforming uses, whose trucking operations, among other things, would be infeasible before those businesses are not viable commercially? And I'm thinking specifically of long delivery trucks that would have trouble making tight turns with the bulb outs. And is there any thought given to those possibilities? The timing issue is my big concern, though.
Yeah, I think to the timing issue, I'm thinking of that new movie, probably going to get the name wrong, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, kind of a thing. There's probably multiple, different solutions, and I don't think that any of us are going to really be able to map that out. What I can tell you is this, is we're not going to get a, huge chunk of money to build this out all at once. So it will be incremental. There's going to be a combination of, if a large project comes through that absolutely requires that we have a piece of that infrastructure, that project is going to have to build it. Or if we have money on the table at the time, then, we could potentially partner. There are lots of, grant sources that we've used in the past. For instance, the infill infrastructure grant, when there's an affordable housing component, that can be used to build that public infrastructure. Right now, we're building out millions of dollars worth of infrastructure using the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Grant, which is improving sidewalks and bike lanes and bus routes all throughout the city. So, in addition to that, we have our normal sources, the STIP funds that come, through the state. There are, other grant sources that engineering goes for competitively on a regular basis. The Old Arcata Road project is an example of a project that's being paid for by state funds that we won through competitive grants. And so there's, in terms of the timeline, when is this going to happen? I do think it's going to be phased. Some of it is going to be, us steadily plodding towards that end to try and, secure grant sources and other sources to build out these pieces. I think your point is pretty insightful that, 8th and 9th Streets are, easier for us. We already own those, every segment of it. So there'll be pieces of that get built out sooner rather than later. I'd mentioned the L Street is has some challenges that will take longer. So I can't really map out exactly what those are. What the purpose of this plan is to state a vision, to state the desired future goal state, and to ensure that as we move forward to build out that future state, that we have a master plan, a guidebook for how we're going to do that. So I know that's not, as satisfactory as being able to say, in fiscal year, 22-23, we're going to start on, Project X. But what I can say also, just in closing on timing, is that we're already starting this. We've got, some of the funds that we secured through one of these grants that I've mentioned is doing improvements to 9th Street. That on the east of K Street side, that are largely compatible with what's being proposed here. So it's, in some senses, based on our existing circulation element, it's already kind of happening now. Second part of your question was, tell me again, I'm sorry. Industrial access, thank you.
I mentioned it in response to Julie's, but I'm just thinking in terms of some of those long trucks that in no way could make it around the holdouts.
Yeah. So your question was two-parted. Which of the businesses that are currently operating but would become non-conforming was one part of it, and then the other part of it was would have this, would effectively be discontinued because of the improvements. First off, there are very few of the business types in the Gateway area right now that I envision would likely become, on the not allowed list and therefore become non-conforming. The plan, the way it's stated right now, is that, businesses or new development that doesn't contribute to, sort of the vibrancy of a community space would be disallowed. We have, a very short list of proposals to start working from, but I think the public process is going to vet out which of those, what those uses should be. One example is mini storage, and I've used this many times to, to sort of put an example to what are the kinds of uses that we don't want to see more of in the future. Mini storage would likely be a hot commodity if we grow and develop. And so the question is, do we want entire blocks right in the near downtown area taken up with mini storage in the future? And the answer is probably no. Can mini storage be incorporated with housing? The answer is probably yes. And then, if you were to design Arcata from the ground up, would you put mini storage in the near downtown? The answer is probably no, given where we're at today. So I think that, as we work through those use questions, that answer will be resolved. But I anticipate that the majority of uses that are ongoing in the Gateway area now, except for heavy industrial and mini storage.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I am referring to the heavy industrial uses.
The only heavy industrial use that I'm aware of is the mill that's on Smo Boulevard. And the owners of R&L Lumber have stated their desire to move to the West End Road area. And so we are, and I feel at liberty to disclose this because one of the managers of R&L Lumber spoke to our Forest Management Committee and disclosed this information to them as well. But we are actually excited about working with them to try and relocate them out to Happy Valley potentially. Because it's a great niche business. It fits right in with with Arcata's history, and it's not a huge job creator, but they have 30, 40 people working there, and we want to keep those jobs in that business in Arcata. And so that's a good example of when there are businesses, and one of the folks that spoke at Early Oral brought this up as well. How are you planning for businesses that may get relocated or dislocated? And what I would say to that is that we want to work real closely, whether it's a business that's potentially dislocated or residents that's getting dislocated, from future development. That to the extent that we can, we want to work with them to relocate in the city of Arcata. We have business loan funds that can help with that. We have programs that we can help with relocation for residential, and so we will cultivate these programs in the future too as the need arises to make sure that we're not casting aside people who are important members of our community now.
Okay, that helps a lot. One quickie final question, which is there was mention of trying to get owners of what would be very large developments with frontage to dedicate frontage to the city. Would that be, in your minds now, in the form of easements or actually full transfers of property and responsibility to the city?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways that this can be done. Certainly, what I would propose is that whether it's the expanded sidewalks or we have and we'll go into more detail about what the publicly accessible private open space looks like when we get to that section in a couple of weeks. But there are lots of spaces that are planned for in the Gateway area that would be open and accessible to the public. And I would suggest that the best way to do that would be through easements. In particular, because then that property owner retains the ownership and the maintenance of those sites and doesn't contribute to the city's inventory of parks and sidewalks and landscaping to maintain. And so those would be irrevocable if they were dedicated as easements. So I think that's the best way to go, because then we get a little more public space without having to maintain it.
I just briefly want to say that from the high-level perspective, as much as I completely appreciate these detailed questions, I love the one-ways. Alliance to me is a very unappealing road to be on, or is it K Street back there? I always forget, but it's just unappealing. I mean, I couldn't imagine walking along it. I never see people walking down there, rarely biking. It feels kind of used and fast-paced and dangerous. What I'm seeing in these visions just looks so appealing. Like, yeah, I want to walk down those streets, the new plan. So thank you for that work.
There's people walking every day to school there, though. I mean, it's like Frogger. I have a senior in high school, and I won't let her walk. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
All right, we're ready to move on.
Okay, I'll jump into a little bit about the proposed active transportation circulation pieces. And then I think, when we get through this, that'll be sort of the high-level part that I wanted to present. There's more detail around exactly what the designs are and what the options for different designs of various, features are. And if you're interested, we can get into those based on questions, but I was thinking we'd save some of that for later. There's also the specific policy language. If you had any questions or wanted to go over any of that, we can run through that as well. So having said that, if I can figure out which keyboard operates this thing. These are the proposed active transportations. We have existing trails, existing, multi-use paths. We have proposed multi-use paths, and et cetera. This is figure 9 in the document. And so, you can look at that for more detail. But I wanted to share with you some of these proposed expansions, because it really does complete the non-motorized circulation pattern and extends, kind of the idea here was to extend the trail network in particular into areas right now that are used by homeless folks for encampments, and try and provide more eyes on and more ways frankly for Arcatans to get around. Again, the intent isn't to dislocate these people, but to be frank, many of these areas are in or adjacent to wetlands, and the impact of having people live in those areas without sanitation and various other sort of amenities that you anticipate from housing is having a pretty significant impact on the environment as well. So that was kind of part of the idea here, a little twofold, if you will. And we'll jump into a few of these proposed roads. So the 8th and 9th Street couplet will have extended trails that'll be segregated bike trails. This green dash line here is another trail that would be proposed along the rail corridor that goes along between M Street and O Street. This is sort of the block between M and O. I'm sorry, that is M Street. So, shoot, let me get oriented here real quick. This is L Street. I'm sorry. So we'd keep the bike trail on L Street, but have new trails extending from M Street along the rail corridor that goes through the mini storage, out to 14th Street with an extension along the rail corridor between M Street and O Street. That would connect with the O Street crossing. There's an existing branch of the old rail that goes out through this area here, and that could be extended. And then Q Street could be opened up for a trail system. Q Street is already basically an existing road bed. We originally were thinking there was a proposal to use this as a service entrance, to have trucks be able to come in through the back side of the Creamery District instead of through the front side of it, which is a really great idea. But at this point, we're recommending that we hold on that and use this as just a trail. The roadbed would support the trail. There are some wetlands. There's old log ponds right next to it here, and then down in the ag field here, there are some wetlands, and so retaining that footprint for that use would allow for preservation of those features. Again, I want to be clear that these aren't intended to be exact locations of where the trail would be, but just representative of where the trail connectivity would occur. So it makes sense that it's going to land on a railroad here. We've put it along an existing rail corridor here, but these might shift in the field when we get down to design level. There is a kind of cool feature here where on 6th Street we'd extend a walking road, a Woonerf, I believe they're called, where vehicles could travel on this. But the idea would be is that people would be out here too, so it would be a really low-speed street. You wouldn't anticipate to have much volume of traffic out here. It would really be designed for people to to walk and bike and recreate on.
Is that between AmeriGas and mini storage?
It is, and this is another interesting little bit. As far as I can tell, we may have abandoned this road. Currently, AmeriGas and the mini storage, share a fence line right about here on the northern side of this purple dash. And so if we did abandon it, it would we'd have to reacquire that, or through some means, gain access through an easement. Let's see, I don't have my slide advances here. Okay, so with that, we're kind of into the policy language. So I don't know if you have big picture questions about the trail network. There have been some comments about retaining L Street, the trail the way it is, leave L Street alone the way that it is, and keep K Street a two-way. We've heard that from the public.
I'm just following the topic of the NCRA and all the complications with that rail network not being abandoned. Is this beyond that? Is this Annie and Mary stuff that's separate from NCRA?
I'm going to have Emily Sinkhorn, our Environmental Services Director, speak on that topic in greater detail. There are portions of this. I haven't tracked it as closely as she has. There are portions of these trails or rails rather, that are probably going to be a part of the Great Redwood Trail Authority. And how those are used, how that all shakes out is uncertain to me at this point. Again, this is an aspirational vision that allows us to work towards that end goal, working with other agencies, other property owners to, secure the legal rights to implement this vision. I guess to that as well, I wanted to respond in part to, Eric from the fire department, who had, noted that the fire department did submit a letter stating some concerns they wanted to make sure that we addressed in the EIR, and I want to, just make sure it's absolutely and abundantly clear that yes, we are going to address those concerns. And we will work with those partner agencies to make sure that we've understood and to the best of our ability conveyed those concerns in the document, address mitigation measures in the document where there are environmental impacts or impacts from from growth that affect these partner agencies. And so that is absolutely the plan from day one to ensure that we address all of the potential ramifications of growth. And so that'll mean working with, Arcata Fire, it'll mean working with the Great Trail Authority to work through these issues that are at this point, frankly, unknowable. If we waited to make decisions until we had all of the solutions to every single question that's going to come up, we would never do anything. We have to say that that's our end goal, and there are going to be legal means that we need to go through to, to acquire properties, to acquire easements, to, have, cause certain conditions to come into being so that we can implement the plan. So I think, obviously the text on the screen is way too small to read, so I'll switch over if you have questions about any of the mobility policies to the document itself. Or we could, recognizing that it's near 8 o'clock, put a pin in it and come back to it at our next meeting. Up to you.
Do we have any questions?
I have a couple of questions, and these are things that we could do after we put a pin in it at some other meeting, but it's just something that I'd like some more information on. It's page 68 of the plan, policy GA7E and GA7F, about the, I guess, kind of what would become super blocks in the non-motorized campus layouts in the Beryl District Master Plan. And I think this is more than just a transportation or a mobility issue. It gets into the bigger design issues that the form-based code would also need to address is what would our process be for considering what would essentially be those super blocks without motorized transportation in the middle, and what would the city's role be in engaging with developers on that, not only when proposals would come forward, but monitoring and potentially getting owners to change setups over the 20 years that this plan would be operating. So yeah, sometime next time or whenever, it would be great to hear more about how that would work.
Yeah, I definitely will take you up on your offer to address that next time. I'd like to make a more thoughtful response than I could probably come up with off the cuff.
Do we have any members of the public who have anything to offer about what we've discussed so far?
Hello again. Colin Fisk with CRTP, and I want to first reiterate what I've said before, which is that this draft plan really is the most bike and pedestrian friendly plan that we've seen in our area, and we strongly support it. It prioritizes healthy, safe, low carbon transportation over vehicular travel. You saw it substantially expands the trail network and prioritizes all sorts of that good transportation that we're looking for. It pioneers the first shared street Wooner in the region, which is exciting. We were just talking about the new development with entirely new non-motorized internal circulation, all sorts of really great stuff. I also want to mention the pedestrian-friendly street frontages, which I'm sure you'll be talking about at another time, the end of the costly parking mandates in this area, and sufficient density to allow real walkability and support good transit service. So that said, of course, we do have some specific comments, and we've submitted those in writing. Don't have time to address all of them tonight, but some of the highlights we are asking for, and Director Loya sort of addressed this, the Class 4 separated bikeways to be the standard on 8th, 9th, K, and L, as well as on 11th Street, because even with improved design, research has shown that with heavy traffic flows, such as these streets will carry, most people require separated facilities in order to bike. And actually, to address your comment earlier, Chair, I think that would also solve a lot of the problems in the high school drop-off zone, because right now people are parking in the bike lane, and they couldn't do that if there's a vertical separation. It would also provide a safer way for kids to get to and from school. We also had some requests about the sidewalk standards, and would ask that the plan explicitly prioritize pedestrian and bike infrastructure over parking, so that if there is a question about converting parking lanes to bike and pedestrian infrastructure where necessary, we would have the answer and not have to debate that each time. We also encourage the addition of a policy giving bikes and pedestrians the right-of-way at key intersections, such as the trail crossing at 11th Street, and some other things which I'm not going to have time to get to, but I do finally want to note that CRTP generally doesn't support new one-way multi-lane couplets, but we do support the concepts in the plan because they will be single-lane, and they will reduce the risk and conflict points between people using different modes of transportation. So again, we strongly support it. We'd ask that you move forward with a few minor changes and just get it moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Matt Simmons with the Redwood Coalition for Climate and Environmental Responsibility. I want to reiterate what Colin said about the plan being really good for non-motorized forms of transportation. On the school subject, I was listening to that, really interesting. I remember when I was a kid, we had the same problem where kids were darting through traffic, and my school ended up actually requiring everyone to take the school bus, and I hated it as a kid. I had to wake up earlier. I didn't like riding on the school bus, but when you think about how much safer it was to have everyone dropped off on a school bus, it just, I think cars are the problem, right? And so you can try to design around all those cars, but at the end of the day, they're like giant metal machines going at high speeds that a lot of them are so high now that you don't even have good visibility looking down. And so finding ways to either get cars out or get lots of people getting to a place and not a car is the best way to increase that safety. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, when I'm making a personal decision about whether to drive somewhere or walk or take a bike, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into that decision, right? Like, how good is the sidewalk? Those new bump outs that you guys are building everywhere are really great. I've noticed it here on 7th Street a lot, that like, I feel so much safer crossing the street there. And then when I'm driving my car, I'm a lot more noticeable of the turns I'm making and the pedestrians in the way. But then when I think about the factor that's the most important for me in terms of that decision, it's distance. It's just the distance I am from where I need to go. And the way to solve that is to increase density and have more housing. And I know that this is a mobility section, but the two things are not separate at all, right? If you want more people walking and biking, you just need more people living nearby. And so I know the plan is already designed to increase density, and I just really think that that's so essential, and we shouldn't be, you know, arbitrarily setting a limit too low, because it's fundamental to what makes this kind of plan work. So thank you, and yeah.
Hello, Chris Richards again. Just want to speak a little bit about this L Street one-way vision that you're promoting. First, I really want to say that I found it quite rude, abusive, when I opened up the draft plan and see this glossy road vision when the landowner, you know, the business owner had not been ever spoken to about this vision or plan or asked about how it would go. And then when you look at the road plan, the property that you've referred to up on the north end of that's not available to the city, you know, I questioned, well, is this plan a viable plan? I'm like, well, maybe they got a good idea here. So I start looking and thinking, and you know, I look at it and I go, well, we're going to take away a lane of traffic going north. We're going to add another lane of traffic going south, which would bring the noise of the natural truck route to 2 areas of the town. And thought, well, that may be not the best idea. And so, you know, I went around, I talked with folks to see what they thought about it, and the consensus that I came up with from the majority of folks is that whole idea doesn't make sense, that it's not a very good idea. And one of the biggest concerns that people have said is the vision of creating another truck lane and the noise and all of that down what is already a people-friendly zone. And everybody's going, why are we going to try to do this? So, you know, I've even heard folks at the Transportation Safety Department, you know, some of the committee members there questioned that whole motive. And then when I looked further and I saw that there wasn't really any viable studies done to show how that would affect the traffic and how it would be a good thing, you know, it all adds up to a poor idea that I would like to see some alternative plans. I mean, it's pretty apparent you don't have the rights to the property for a variety of reasons, and it should be pretty clear at this point that you should already be presenting some alternative plans to direct traffic through that part of town. So anyway, I'm hoping to see some varieties. You mentioned that there was some ideas already on the table, to look forward to that. And I realize if this ever happened, it would be way off in the future anyway, most likely. But yeah, please come up with some alternative plans and show folks some other options, because I think you're going to have to do that eventually anyway. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joanne McGarry, and again, climate action and greenhouse gas reduction and lifestyle change and major behavior change on how we move and live in our communities is going to be necessary. I think discouraging individual car traffic at any level is what we really need to do in this plan. I do think that K and L one way each direction is maybe even too easy for for a car traveling through town in that neighborhood. And I think looking at something like coming up, headed north on K, and then heading south on something like Q, making it really not convenient to drive a car so much. Also, the comment about the drop-off at the schools. I stand in front of Arcata High on occasion to express my concern about the cost of fossil fuel in the vehicles that are dropping an individual child off. And we really do need to change behaviors in how kids get to school and how we move through places, and really discouraging cars on most of the roads. And when we're talking about alternative transit, we also have to recognize that there are a wide variety of other alternative vehicles that people use now to get through town. And I am one of the people who rides a one-speed tricycle that certain bike paths in town are not accommodating for. There's people, if you have children or large cargo that you're carrying on a bike, those cargo bikes are also a difficult design sometimes to maneuver on existing two-wheeled bicycle designed roads. We've got those unicycles, we've got scooters, we've got the electric bikes that are moving really fast past me on current bike lanes. So there's a lot of variety that we need to take into consideration when we're thinking about alternative routes and alternative means of transportation. But behavior change and getting people out of cars is the number one thing that we need to bring into this design for our climate future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that are on the phone?
Yeah, there's a couple. Go ahead, Aaron.
All right. Yeah, the city did an excellent job creating a primarily pedestrian corridor through the Creamery District. My family and co-workers use it daily. We're asking.
Sorry, Aaron. I'm sorry, Aaron. Can you start over again? The speaker went to sleep again.
Okay. All right. So what I was saying was that the city did an excellent job creating a primarily pedestrian corridor through the Creamery District. Our family and co-workers use it daily. Please think long and hard about changing it from a quiet and safe pedestrian corridor into the main southbound road and truck route in town. Also, I agree with the chair that M Street is an unmitigated hazard for kids trying to come and go from Arcata High. Even once they cross Alliance, they end up on M Street where there are no sidewalks, no southbound speed limit posted, plenty of large puddles and quagmires to dodge that put a kid even further into the path of traffic, because there's no storm water drainage at all on M Street. There's not a single inlet, there's no curbing, there's nothing to contain the water. And I had to put a berm in front of my house to keep my property from flooding. I realized that the first winter I moved in. Another thing is there's not even any lines on the road, like zero lines. Like you go to M Street, you look all the way down, there's not a single line on the entire road. And there's even new sections that were done when McKinney developed that property on the corner M and 11th. They put in a new roadbed, and there was never any lines put on it, that tell you where you're going to go, where people are going to be. I'm assuming they didn't paint any lines on it because it's not a paintable surface due to all the potholes and crumbling aggregate from the data center construction and basically the overall deterioration of the road. So I think we have to think about, the condition, the current conditions aren't great, as far as mobility to and from Arcata High School. And I don't know if safe routes to school also apply to high school kids and not just elementary kids, but I think it should. I have a kid that walks the road every day. Kind of worry about it sometimes, especially that intersection at M and Alliance. One last thing I want to point out is that there are 2 mills in the proposed gateway area, because there's, I believe, Bob S. Lumber or whatever it's called, the one on 14th off of M. that operates a mill too, because we were talking about that earlier, and it was sad there was only one mill, and I believe Bob S. Lumber is a mill. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Keenan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, in general, definitely would like to just offer support of the plan as articulated. It is great to see mobility and, of course, that expanding out to include bicyclists, pedestrians, transit users be such a central focus of this plan. So strong support for this section as it's written. A couple thoughts that I had that I just thought I'd offer. Although I know that the Planning Commission doesn't have control over this, with regard to emergency vehicles, you know, like in Europe, they have these narrow cobblestone streets through all of their cities. And the solution that was arrived at is that they just don't have only monstrous emergency response vehicles. Like they have kind of smaller emergency response vehicles. So just want to put that out there as an option. You know, another thing is that, yeah, you know, definitely separated bikeways. I think, you know, as has been expressed by other speakers, this is the gold standard of safety. So let's try to get more separated bikeways in, and in general favoring pedestrians and bicyclists over parking. Strongly in favor of that. And at the intersections of where, you know, bike paths and roads cross, giving the preference to the people using the path. You know, and again, this kind of gets at the heart of what the hazard is for pedestrians. And of course, the hazard is cars. And so to the extent that we can get fewer cars, to the extent that we can slow cars down, it becomes a safer place to be. And of course, it's a positive feedback loop that the more pedestrians that you have, the slower the cars will go. So we think about the experience of driving on the Arcata Plaza versus driving all along Broadway. I mean, clearly these are two very different places, but in one, you have a lot of pedestrian traffic and you have a place that's very hazardous. Or like there are a lot of potential conflicts, so people go slow. And then on the other, you know, you get a green light and you're like, man, I want to go 45 miles an hour down this street. So like having more pedestrians, it creates a positive feedback loop where people have to be more careful. And so the ways that we slow down traffic will make, for instance, an intersection of a path and a road, or also these roadways that are near schools, safer. So keeping that kind of as a true north, how do we do the interventions that slow down traffic, and of course making it safer? That makes it safer, and having more pedestrians then also feeds, you know, if it's safe to walk to school, more kids will walk to school, right? Right now it feels hazardous. If it's safe, more kids will do it, or more parents will feel comfortable, you know, sending their kid along their way. And then the last comment that I'll make, thank you for listening to all of this, is that with these, you know, to the extent that we can have, I don't know, like an adaptive planning process, because as it was alluded to, we don't know what's going to go on with the Great Redwood Trail. You know, there are things that are up in the air, but taking action and moving in what we know is the right direction now is, I think, of critical importance. Okay, that concludes my comments for this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Keenan. Go ahead, Eric.
I just wanted to thank David for his acknowledgement of the fire department's letter and interest in interacting with us to make sure that the components of the EIR meet everyone's expectations. And so thank you for that, and I will communicate that to Chief McDonald. On the plan itself, so this isn't fire department stuff, this is Eric Loudenslager personal stuff. I live on 15th Street, just off the Gateway project adjacent to the high school. And the traffic there is incredible. We always have to, if we use our car, we have to time our arrivals and departures and transportation around anticipated traffic jams. So I like the idea of having all the kids go to school on a bus so that there's no cars over there at all. But that aside, if you develop Alliance and K Street so that traffic actually slows down, then there could actually be more congestion there than there is now for a longer period of time. So you will have to do some thinking about that. And I certainly recognize all the challenges that you have to deal with. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hello. I just wanted to comment that I support the Gateway Plan as conceived. I think this dense walkable development is important to address the climate crisis and the housing crisis. And I just wanted to say also that I would also support having fewer meetings with clear decision points. Because it's often difficult to know which meetings are important to come to, and lots of folks are busy. So yeah, I'd appreciate if the commission considered that. And yeah, thanks so much for all of your work.
Okay, thank you. And that is the last person in line online.
Okay, so at our next meeting, we are going to continue, and where exactly are we going to continue? Paige, where are we ending?
We could pick up on the specific policies if you'd like, and we'll definitely go over some of the more detailed drawings around the designs that have been put forward on the plan for alternatives.
67. Yeah. Page 67 is where we're going to start next at our next meeting. All right, so we are going to move on to correspondence and communications.
Can I ask a quick question? Planning out, then, do we know what a schedule or tentative schedule for when we're going to tackle different subjects? Did I miss something?
I will.
Work in progress.
Yeah, I'll bring an itinerary for our next meeting as to anticipated dates for each of those topic areas.
And I guess there has to be some wiggle room, like we've gone over on mobility. We'll be talking about it again at the next meeting, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anyone else? Oh, Kimberly?
I had a quick question. I'm wondering if we might get some follow-up on the home key with regards to the process. I don't know if this is true, but I'm hearing in the community that folks that live in Valley West haven't been signed up, and I just want to make sure that, you know, one of the proposed in the agenda is that it would help Valley West unhoused community, and I'm just afraid that we're going to have it filled up from all the folks outside of Arcata, and it won't actually address the housing needs of the folks that live in Arcata, in particular those that are in Valley West. So I'm hoping that we can find out what's going on with that and make sure that the continuum of care addresses that somehow, some way.
All right, I have a couple of things. So a lot of people mentioned that they aren't able to make the meetings here, and I completely understand. But, you know, when you write in a letter, this is to members of the public, when you write in a letter, that actually has a lot of power. It has more power than you think. We get those ahead of time, and we are really able to read those and think about those. We'll get those usually a week before. And so don't think that if you can't come, that you can't have an impact, you can't have a say, because you can. And I like getting the letters. We have such smart people here. We're a very educated, apparently, community. So we'll get some letters, and it'll be eye-opening for me sometimes. So don't think that you have to be here to have an impact. You don't. I just wanted to point that out. And then, we were talking last time, we spent way too much time talking about emails, so that people could email us directly with their comments. And I have come around, and I'm thinking that we should have emails so people can, they have comments, just email us. Just tell us what you're thinking when you're thinking it. So how does the rest of, can we have a straw vote? How many people here would like to have a city email so that people could, so Judith and me, what about John? No? No. So he's going with the majority.
I'm sort of tepid.
Okay.
I would say tepid, and if I was expected to actually respond to emails, then I'm definitely a no. I mean, I could see a simple response of thanks, got your information, but I'm not going to engage in email back and forth. I don't have time for it. There's no way.
Okay, and Kimberly?
I'm absolutely for it. I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure that I'll have time to answer each and every one, but I sure would like to be able to hear what people are thinking.
And Figueroa, what does he think? Is he on there? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm interested in the email piece. It's really a matter of the opportunity. If you want to engage, you can engage, but it's just a matter of documentation. And I think that's the most important piece, is just having it for the administrative record. So that's why I appreciate that, and getting an email through the city.
Okay, and I just kind of circle back on that. I did mention at our last meeting when this came up that I'd be looking into, with the management team, our IT team, and the city attorney to make sure that we, thread the needle correctly. I just heard a 4-3 vote that most of you want emails, and so I'll convey that back, but we don't have I just want to be clear that this straw vote didn't create emails for you. We're still working on it at the staff level, and so I'll report back at our next meeting.
Okay, and just before I adjourn, I just want to remind the public again that we are going to try to come up with a strategy, David and I, to kind of anticipate when different things will come up before us, and we'll try to stick to a schedule, but it might be difficult. So you'll hear about that at the next meeting. So is there anything else before I adjourn?
I just wanted to convey to the Planning Commission that, as the public pointed out, the Climate Action Plan was released, the draft was released. I think it was worth waiting for. Staff at the county and a couple of the cities put in tireless hours to make it what I feel is a very good document. And that will be presented, we're thinking at this point, to the City Council on May 18th. And so tune in for that, for a presentation of the draft. And we'll put links to its location on our website. So look for those as well. We'll send out a news feed on that. That's the only thing I have.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.